He woke up to a cold bed and a silence that screamed louder than any alarm. His pregnant wife, Olivia, was gone. The note she left on the pillow offered no comfort, only cryptic words that tied his stomach in knots. When the police arrived, they found her abandoned car by the old pier. Her passport was tucked inside the glove compartment, a detail that made no sense. But it was the other discovery that turned his world upside down, a faint smear of blood on the passenger floor mat. The lab results came back, and the blood wasn't Olivia's. It belonged to someone else entirely. The first thing Liam noticed was the cold. Not the chill of the early April morning creeping through the window, but the profound, empty cold of the space beside him in bed. His hand swept across the sheets, where his wife Olivia should have been finding only rumpled linen that had lost its warmth. He blinked his eyes open. 4:17 a.m. The red digital numbers on the clock glowed accusingly in the dark. Olivia was 8 months pregnant. Her new normal was waking up at all hours a prisoner to the baby's random kicks and the constant pressure on her bladder. Usually he'd hear her padding down the hallway to the bathroom or rummaging in the kitchen for a snack. But tonight, the house was silent. A heavy, unnatural stillness had settled over their small, suburban home. "Livy," he called out, his voice thick with sleep. No answer. A knot of unease tightened in his stomach. Liam pushed himself out of bed, his feet finding the familiar cool of the hardwood floor. He checked the nursery first, a room bathed in pale moonlight filled with a freshly assembled crib and boxes of diapers. Empty. He moved to the bathroom. Empty. The kitchen was dark and tidy. A glass of water left on the counter, the only sign of recent activity. Panic began to prickle at the edges of his consciousness. He walked through the entire house, flipping on lights, his calls for Olivia growing more urgent. Her purse was gone from its usual hook by the door. Her car keys were missing. But her phone, her lifeline, was sitting on the kitchen island right next to the water glass. A single unread message glowed on the screen from her sister asking about the baby shower. He raced back to the bedroom, his heart hammering against his ribs. And that's when he saw it. Propped against her pillow was a single folded piece of paper. It wasn't a long letter, just a few lines in her familiar, elegant script. "Liam, I'm so sorry. I can't do this. Please, don't come looking for me. I need to think. I need space. Just for a little while. I love you. Oh." The words blurred. Can't do this. What did that mean? The pregnancy. Their marriage. She loved him. But she was leaving. The contradictions were a physical blow. He read the note again and again, as if the ink might rearrange itself into something that made sense. This wasn't Olivia. She was the planner, the one who made lists and schedules. She wouldn't just walk out into the night, heavily pregnant, without her phone. He grabbed his own phone, his hands trembling as he dialed her number, knowing it would be useless. It rang on the counter in the other room, a mocking sound in the silent house. He called her sister Emily, his voice cracking when she finally answered, groggy and confused. Is Livy with you?" "What, Liam? It's 4 a.m. "No, why would she be?" "She's gone," he said, the words tasting like ash. "She left a note." "I don't understand." Emily was awake now, the concern sharp in her voice. "Okay, Liam, calm down. What did the note say? Did you have a fight?" "No. Everything was fine. We had dinner. We watched a movie. It was normal." He read her the note. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. "That doesn't sound like her," Emily finally said, echoing his own thoughts. Leaving without her phone. That's not right. Call the police, Liam. Right now. Hanging up, he felt a wave of nausea. Calling the police made it real. It meant admitting he had no idea where his pregnant wife was. It meant inviting the world into the cracks that had just appeared in his life. But Emily was right. He dialed 911, the automated voice on the other end, feeling impossibly detached from the chaos erupting inside him. Two uniformed officers, a man named Peterson and a woman named Chen, arrived within 15 minutes. Their presence filled the house, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to Liam's frantic energy. He gave them the note, explained the situation, his voice catching as he described Olivia's advanced pregnancy. Her car is a silver Honda Civic license plate, 8KX4Y2, he recited from memory. Officer Peterson's gaze was steady, not unkind, but measured. Did you two have any arguments recently, Mr. Hayes? Any unusual stress? No, I told you. Everything was normal, Liam insisted, though a flicker of guilt pricked him. Was it? He'd been so stressed about the new mortgage, about the baby's expenses. Had he been distant? Had he missed something? And she's never done anything like this before? Officer Chen asked, her eyes scanning the room. Never, he said, shaking his head. She's the most dependable person I know. They took his statement, their questions methodical and detached. They told him they would issue a bolo. Be on the lookout for the car. They advised him to stay home and call them if he heard anything. As they left, the sun was beginning to rise, casting long, eerie shadows across the living room. The house felt cavernous now, no longer a home, but a crime scene. A scene where the victim was his wife, and the crime was a mystery he couldn't begin to solve. He was alone with the silence, the cold sheets, and a note that explained nothing at all. The first 24 hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Liam existed in a fog of caffeine and fear jumping every time his phone buzzed, his hopes crashing with each call from a well-meaning relative instead of the police. He'd answered the same questions a dozen times for Olivia's frantic parents, for her sister Emily, who now sat with him in the suffocatingly quiet house, and for the detective who had taken over the case. Her name was Isabella Rossi. She was sharp and direct, with intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than he was saying. She arrived late in the afternoon, her presence commanding in a way the uniformed officers hadn't been. She didn't offer platitudes, she asked pointed questions. Mr. Hayes, you said everything was normal. But normal for a couple expecting their first child often involves a high level of stress. She began sitting across from him at the dining table where he and Olivia had eaten their last meal together. Were there financial pressures, arguments about the future, the usual worries, I guess? Liam admitted, feeling a defensive edge to his voice. A baby is a big change, but we wanted this. We were happy. Detective Rossi made a note. Did Olivia have any close friends she might have confided in? Anyone who knew of another side to this happiness? Liam hesitated. Olivia was friendly, but she was a private person. Her sister mostly. Maybe a few colleagues from work, but she's been on maternity leave for 2 weeks. The call came just as dusk was settling, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that felt like a mockery of his mood. It was Officer Peterson. They'd found the car. It's parked at the end of Seaview Pier, Peterson said. We have officers securing the scene. We'd like you to stay where you are for now, Mr. Hayes. Detective Rossi is on her way there. Seaview Pier. It was a desolate spot a few towns over, known for its crumbling boardwalk and the gulls that cried mournfully over the grey water. They had gone there once, years ago, on one of their first dates. It held no special significance since. Why would she go there? Emily put a hand on his arm. Maybe she just needed to be by the water, to think. But the knot in Liam's gut told him it was more than that. Detective Rossi found the silver Honda Civic exactly where it had been reported, parked at a strange angle near the splintered pilings of the old pier. The location was isolated, shielded from the main road, a place you went if you didn't want to be seen. Her team was already at work, their flashlights cutting through the deepening twilight. The car was unlocked. Rossi pulled on a pair of latex gloves before carefully opening the driver's side door. The interior was pristine. Too pristine. No signs of a struggle, no discarded wrappers, no forgotten items on the seat. It was as if it had been wiped clean. Olivia's purse was missing, which was expected. Her phone was at home. But then Rossi's flashlight beam fell on the glove compartment, which was slightly ajar. She eased it open. Inside, nestled between the car's manual and old registration papers, was Olivia's passport. Rossi's brow furrowed. Why would a woman planning to disappear for a little while leave her passport behind? It was the one document you'd take if you were planning a real escape. It didn't fit the narrative of a stressed-out wife needing space. It suggested she wasn't planning on going far, or that her plans had been violently interrupted. "Get the forensics team to go over every inch of this," she said to one of her officers. "I want everything dusted, swabbed, and bagged. Pay attention to the details." She continued her own search. She looked under the seats, in the side pockets of the doors. Nothing. It was all frustratingly, unnervingly clean. She was about to step back when something caught her eye. On the dark fabric of the passenger side floor mat, almost invisible in the dim light, was a small, dark smear. It wasn't mud. It was too dark, too concentrated. "Harris," she called to the lead forensic technician. "Focus on this, right here." She pointed her light at the spot. Harris knelt, his expression turning serious. He took out a swab and carefully collected a sample. "Looks like blood," he said, his voice low. "Dried. Not a lot. Could be from anything, a nosebleed, a cut." "Get it to the lab. I want it prioritized," Rossi ordered, "and run the DNA against Olivia Hayes. I need to know if it's hers." As the team worked under the harsh glare of portable floodlights, Rossi stared out at the dark, churning water of the Atlantic. The discovery of the passport was puzzling. The potential bloodstain was alarming. A pregnant woman vanishes, leaving a note that says she wants space, but her car is found abandoned in a secluded spot, with her passport inside and a trace of what could be blood. This was no longer just a missing person case. The clean interior, the abandoned car, the passport left behind, it felt staged. And the small dark smear on the floor mat whispered of a far more sinister explanation than a wife simply walking away. It hinted at a third party, at violence. The question was Olivia the victim, or was someone else? Detective Rossi's office was a controlled chaos of files and cold coffee. On the large whiteboard, Olivia Hayes's smiling face was pinned in the center. Around it, a spider web of notes connected the known facts: the cryptic note, the abandoned car, the passport, the unidentified bloodstain. The lab had confirmed the blood was human, but the DNA was still being processed. It wasn't a match for Olivia, whose sample they'd retrieved from a toothbrush at the house. Rossi took a sip of her stale coffee. Her focus zeroed in on the man at the heart of the web, Liam Hayes. His story was consistent, his grief seemed genuine, but a detective's instinct was built on skepticism. Grief could be a mask for guilt just as easily as it could be a sign of loss. She decided to dig into the one area Liam had been vague about: finances. The usual worries, he'd said. Rossi knew that usual worries could be a deep, dark chasm for some couples. She assigned a junior detective, a tech-savvy kid named Martinez, to pull their financial records. While Martinez worked, Rossi drove back to the Hayes house. Emily, Olivia's sister, was still there, her face etched with sleepless worry. Liam looked worse. His eyes were bloodshot, and he paced the living room like a caged animal. Mr. Hayes, Rossi, began, her tone gentle but firm. I need to ask you some more direct questions. We're exploring every possibility, and that includes understanding the pressures you are both under. Tell me about your job. Liam stopped pacing. I'm a project manager at Sterling Construction. Why? And your financial situation? You mentioned a new mortgage. It's tight but manageable, he said quickly. A little too quickly. The housing market is crazy, but we got a decent rate. We were making it work. Emily, who had been sitting quietly on the sofa, shifted uncomfortably. She looked from Liam to Rossi, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Liam, is that true? Liam's head snapped towards her. What are you talking about, Em? It's just… Livy mentioned a few weeks ago that you two were fighting about money. She said you were being secretive about the bills. A flash of anger crossed Liam's face, quickly suppressed. He turned back to Rossi, his jaw tight. We had a disagreement. All couples do. It was nothing. Rossi's gaze didn't waver. Was it nothing, Mr. Hayes? Or was there something specific you were being secretive about? Before he could answer, Rossi's phone buzzed. It was Martinez. Detective, you're not going to believe this, he said, his voice crackling with excitement. I've got their bank statements, credit card bills, the works. The mortgage is already 2 months in arrears. They've maxed out 3 credit cards. But that's not the half of it. Rossi listened, her expression hardening. Go on. Liam Hayes hasn't been a project manager at Sterling Construction for the last 4 months. His employment was terminated at the end of December. According to their records, he was laid off due to company-wide cutbacks. Rossi looked at Liam, who was staring at the floor, the picture of a man whose world was collapsing. 4 months, Martinez, she confirmed, her voice low and dangerous. 4 months. He's been draining their savings account in steady increments, probably to keep up the illusion of a paycheck coming in. The account is almost empty. They were on the verge of financial ruin, and it looks like Olivia had no idea. Rossi hung up. The air in the room was thick with unspoken truths. Mr. Hayes, she said, her voice dropping the gentle pretense. Your wife is 8 months pregnant and missing. We've found her car with a bloodstain inside. And I've just learned that you've been lying to her and to me for the last 4 months. You lost your job. You're drowning in debt. And you didn't tell her. Liam finally looked up, his face ashen. The fight had drained out of him, replaced by a hollow despair. I was going to, he whispered. I was waiting for the right time. I kept thinking I'd find another job before she had to know. I didn't want to stress her out. Not with the baby. Emily gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Oh, Liam. She would have wanted to know. She would have helped. Helped. How he shot back, his voice raw with desperation. By panicking, by telling her parents we were failures before we even started our family, I wanted to be the man who could provide for her. I wanted to fix it. His confession hung in the air, ugly and pathetic. To Rossi, it was more than just a domestic tragedy. It was a motive, a powerful one, a man on the brink of having his lies exposed, his life imploding. A wife who was about to discover the man she married was a fraud. What happens when that pressure cooker explodes? So you fought, Rossi? Pressed, her voice like steel. The night she disappeared, you fought about the money. Liam squeezed his eyes shut, a tear tracing a path through the stubble on his cheek. No, I swear we didn't. We watched a movie, we went to bed. I was going to tell her on the weekend. I had it all planned out. But Rossi wasn't convinced. The timing was too perfect. The lies were too deep. Liam Hayes was no longer just the grieving husband. He was her primary suspect. He had the motive, he had the opportunity, and he had a history of profound deception. The question was, did he have it in him to make his pregnant wife disappear, to keep his secrets buried, while Liam's financial deceit cast a dark shadow over him? Detective Rossi knew that assumptions were the enemy of good police work. He was the primary suspect, yes, but she had to keep every avenue open. She sent a pair of officers to conduct a door-to-door canvass of the Hayes' neighborhood, a routine procedure that rarely yielded anything more than gossip. This time, however, it paid off. An elderly woman, a few houses down, a Mrs. Gable, who spent most of her days watching the world from her front window, provided an interesting tidbit. Olivia was a sweet girl, she told the officer, kept to herself mostly. But the last month or so, she had a visitor, a woman, drove a little red car. They'd sit out on the porch for hours talking. Looked serious, you know, not just idle chatter. The officer pressed for more. Did you catch the visitor's name? Heard Olivia call her Chloe once, Mrs. Gable said, nodding. A pretty thing with dark curly hair. Seemed to really care about Olivia. When the information reached Rossi, it was a jolt. Liam had never mentioned a Chloe. He'd insisted Olivia's only real confidant was her sister. Was this another secret, or simply a friendship so new Liam was unaware of it? Rossi brought the name to Liam. His reaction was one of genuine confusion. Chloe, I've never heard of her. Are you sure? Your neighbor seems quite certain, Rossi replied, watching him closely. A new friend, perhaps? Someone from a pregnancy group? No, she hated those groups. Liam said, shaking his head, said they were too competitive. I don't know any Chloe. Livy would have mentioned her, but she hadn't mentioned her, just like he hadn't mentioned being unemployed for 4 months. Their entire life, Rossi realized, was a carefully curated performance. What other secrets were hidden behind the curtains? Finding this, Chloe, was now a top priority. She could be the key to understanding Olivia's state of mind, the one person Olivia hadn't been performing for. Martinez was tasked with finding her, starting with a search for any Chloe in Olivia's work and social circles. As Martinez began his digital manhunt, Rossi's phone rang. It was the forensics lab. Detective, we've got a hit on the DNA from the floor mat, the technician said, a note of urgency in his voice. Rossi sat up straighter. It's not Olivia's, we know that. Correct. And it's not Liam Hayes's either. We ran his sample as a precaution. The DNA belongs to a Mr. Adrian Vescovi, and Mr. Vescovi has a record. Rossi's mind raced. This was the twist she'd been waiting for. What kind of record? Mostly petty stuff, shoplifting, possession. But he has 2 priors for carjacking, and another for assault. He's a low-level career criminal who operates in the coastal towns, including the area around Seaview Pier. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. The clean car, the missing purse, it could all be the work of a professional. A carjacking gone wrong. A pregnant woman who fought back. The passport left behind because it was of no value to a common thief. Liam's financial troubles could be a tragic but entirely separate drama. What's Vescovi's current status? Rossi demanded. He's out on parole. Last known address is a halfway house in Northwood, about a 20-minute drive from the pier. Get a warrant for his arrest and for a search of his residence. Now Rossi ordered, her voice sharp with purpose. And send a unit to pick him up. I want him in my interview room yesterday. The revelation of Adrian Vescovi's involvement was a bombshell. The investigation which had been narrowing its focus on Liam, now exploded outwards. The image of a desperate husband lying to his wife was being replaced by the far more terrifying image of a violent predator. Rossi felt a surge of adrenaline. If Vescovi had Olivia, she was in unimaginable danger. The blood in the car meant he was injured, which could make him even more unpredictable. The case had just become a race against time, a desperate search for a pregnant woman who may have had the terrible misfortune of being in the wrong place at the very worst time. Liam's lies were still a problem. They were a tangle of threads that Rossi would eventually have to unravel. But for now, they were secondary. The priority was Adrian Vescovi. Finding him and finding out what he did the night he crossed paths with Olivia Hayes was the only thing that mattered. The blood on the floor mat had finally spoken, and it told a story of violence, of a stranger in the dark, and of a whole new level of fear. Finding Chloe proved easier than expected. Martinez, the tech-savvy junior detective, cross-referenced Olivia's work email with social media. He found a Chloe Jansen, who had been in a brief email exchange with Olivia about a freelance graphic design project a few months back. Her profile picture showed a woman with distinctive dark curly hair. Her address was only a few blocks from the Hayes home. Detective Rossi and a partner were at Chloe Jansen's apartment within the hour. The door opened to reveal the woman from the profile picture, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. She'd clearly seen the news. "Is this about Olivia?" she asked, her voice trembling. "May we come in?" Ms. Jansen, Rossi asked gently. Chloe led them into a small, artfully decorated apartment. She sank onto a velvet couch, wringing her hands. "I don't understand any of this. The news, they're making it sound like her husband." "We're exploring all angles," Rossi said, cutting to the chase. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Gable, mentioned you were a frequent visitor, a close friend." Chloe let out a shaky breath. "We got close, yeah? Fast. I met her at a coffee shop a couple of months ago. We were both working there. We just clicked. She needed someone to talk to. This was it. The perspective no one else had. Talk about what Chloe tears welled in Chloe's eyes. About everything. About how terrified she was. Rossi leaned forward. Terrified of what? Of Liam? "No, not of him," Chloe said, shaking her head vehemently. "Of the baby, of being a mother." She felt trapped. She loved Liam, she really did, but she felt like this whole life, the house, the suburbs, the baby was a role she was playing, and she was forgetting her lines. This painted a completely different picture of Olivia. Not just a happy, expectant mother, but a woman suffocating under the weight of her own life choices. She was also worried about money. Chloe continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. She knew something was wrong. Liam was being cagey, deflecting her questions. She had this gut feeling that they were in some kind of trouble, but she couldn't prove it. It was making her feel crazy. This corroborated the financial motive, but from a new angle. Olivia wasn't oblivious. She was suspicious. Was she planning on leaving him, Rossi asked. "Yes," Chloe said, the word hanging in the air. "She was. That's what we were always talking about. I was helping her make a plan, not to disappear forever, but to go stay with an old college friend in Oregon for a few weeks. To get some perspective, clear her head. She was going to tell Liam. She was just trying to find the courage. And the note she left, I helped her write it," Chloe admitted, shame-faced. "We drafted it a dozen times. We wanted something that would make him back off, give her space, but not cause a full-blown panic. We obviously failed." Rossi processed this information. So the disappearance was planned. But the abandoned car, the passport, the blood, That wasn't part of it. Did she tell you when she was leaving? She was going to go that night, Chloe whispered. She was going to pack a bag, drive to my place, and I was going to take her to the airport in the morning. She was supposed to be here. I woke up, and she never came. I've been calling her, texting, but her phone was off. While Rossi was absorbing Chloe's story, her other team was moving in on Adrian Vescovi. They found him not at his halfway house, but holed up in a cheap motel room. He didn't resist arrest. He was a wiry man with shifty eyes and a fresh, crudely bandaged cut on his forearm. In the sterile environment of the police interrogation room, under the harsh lights, Vescovi was a cornered rat. At first, he denied everything. He hadn't been near Seaview Pier. He hadn't seen any silver Honda. Rossi, fresh from her conversation with Chloe, entered the room and placed a single evidence bag on the metal table. Inside was the bloodied floor mat. "Your blood, Adrian," she said, her voice flat. "Your DNA. All over this mat, from a car belonging to a missing pregnant woman. So let's try this again." Vescovi's bravado crumbled. He stared at the bag, his face turning grey. "I didn't touch her," he stammered. "I swear to God I didn't see any woman." "Then why was your blood in her car?" he finally broke. "I was looking for a score, okay? A car to boost. I saw the Honda parked out of the way, looked perfect. The door was locked, so I used a pry bar on the small back window. It shattered, and a piece of glass sliced my arm open. That's how I got cut." "Go on," Rossi said, her gaze unwavering. "I was bleeding everywhere. I reached in, unlocked the door, and was about to get in. But just as I opened the driver's side, a car came down the access road, its headlights sweeping across the pier. I panicked. I thought it was a cop. I slammed the door and ran. I hid in the dunes until they left, and then I just got out of there. You didn't see who was in the car you boosted. You didn't see Olivia Hayes. No, I swear, the car was empty, dark. I never saw any pregnant lady. All I did was break a window and cut myself. I didn't take anything. I didn't hurt anyone. It was just a botched theft." His story was frantic, desperate, but it had the ring of truth. The details aligned, the cut on his arm, the method of entry, the reason for fleeing. But it left Rossi with a chilling new reality. Olivia's plan was to leave that night. Vescovi's attempted theft happened that night. But if Vescovi was telling the truth, Olivia wasn't in the car when he broke into it. She never made it to the pier. So where was she? She had left the house. She had a plan to meet Chloe, but she never arrived. Her car, however, did end up at the pier where a random criminal happened upon it. It didn't make sense. Someone else had to have driven the car there. Someone who was with Olivia after she left her home, but before Vescovi showed up. The investigation had come full circle, right back to the house on Maple Street, right back to Liam. Adrian Vescovi's confession changed the board entirely. He was a red herring, a ghost who had stumbled through the crime scene, leaving behind a convenient but ultimately misleading clue. He was guilty of attempted auto theft, but not of harming Olivia Hayes. Detective Rossi was left with a gaping hole in her timeline. Olivia leaves the house sometime after midnight. Her plan is to drive to Chloe's apartment. Chloe lives 10 minutes away, but Olivia never arrives. Hours later, her car is found abandoned 30 minutes away in the opposite direction at Seaview Pier. If Vescovi found it empty, who drove it there? Rossi returned to the one person at the center of it all, Liam. She needed to re-examine his initial statement to pick it apart piece by piece. She sat in her car outside the Hayes house, now a place of grim vigil, and pulled up the transcript of Liam's 911 call and his first interview with Officer Peterson. He'd claimed he woke up at 4:17 a.m. and discovered Olivia was gone. He'd called her sister, then the police. The 911 call was logged at 4:48 a.m. It was a solid, believable timeline. But now, with the new information, Rossi saw it differently. Vescovi had said he saw headlights at the pier, which scared him off. He couldn't give an exact time, but he estimated it was real late, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. If someone drove Olivia's car to the pier and left it there, it happened in that window. Long before Liam claimed he woke up, Rossi's eyes narrowed. There was something else, a small detail she had previously overlooked. In his initial panicked statement to Officer Peterson, Liam had said, "I rolled over and the bed was cold." She must have been gone for hours. Hours, plural. At the time, it seemed like a figure of speech, the frantic exaggeration of a distraught husband. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a slip of the tongue, a moment of truth, before he'd had time to construct his official story? If he woke at 4:17 a.m., she might have been gone for 1 hour, maybe 2. But to describe the bed as so cold, she must have been gone for hours, suggested he knew she'd left much, much earlier. The pieces began to click into place with sickening clarity. The lie about his job wasn't just about pride, it was about control. Chloe's story revealed Olivia was planning to leave him. What if she had told him that night? What if the argument he denied ever happened was the most catastrophic fight of their lives, a man whose whole world of lies is about to be exposed, a pregnant wife who has discovered the truth and is walking out the door? It was a recipe for a tragedy. There was one more thread Rossi needed to pull. On a hunch, she had Martinez run a deep financial check on Liam Hayes, looking beyond the debt. She was looking for anything recent, anything anomalous. Martinez called her back an hour later. "Detective, I found something," he said. "It's a life insurance policy. Liam Hayes took one out on his wife 6 weeks ago." Rossi's blood ran cold. "How much? $1 million. Liam is the sole beneficiary. The first quarterly premium was paid from that dwindling savings account 2 weeks ago." That was the nail. People took out life insurance, especially with a baby on the way. But a man who was secretly unemployed and drowning in debt, taking out $1 million policy on the wife he was lying to, it wasn't just fiscally irresponsible, it was criminally suspicious. Armed with Vescovi's statement, the discrepancy in the timeline, and the life insurance policy, Rossi knew she had him. It was time to break him. She didn't call first. She walked up to the front door and knocked. Liam answered, his face a mask of weary sorrow. Emily was at his side. "Detective," he said. "Any news?" "Yes," Rossi said, her voice devoid of sympathy. "We have news. Adrian Vescovi is in custody. He confessed to breaking into Olivia's car." A flicker of something relief crossed Liam's face. "So did he have her?" "No," Rossi said, stepping into the house. "He didn't. He says the car was empty. He's a car thief, Liam, not a kidnapper. Someone else drove that car to the pier." She paused, letting the weight of her words fill the room. "Someone who wanted us to find it there. Someone who wanted us to think Olivia just drove away and vanished." She stared directly at him. "You told us you woke up at 4:17 a.m., but we have a witness who places Olivia's car at the pier as early as 2 a.m. You told my officer she must have been gone for hours. How would you know that, Liam, if you were sleeping soundly until after 4? Liam's composure began to crack. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Emily, then back at Rossi, his eyes wide with panic. "And then there's the life insurance," Liam Rossi continued, her voice relentless. $1 million policy, taken out just as your secret life of unemployment and debt was about to be discovered by the woman you were supposed to protect. The wife who, according to her best friend, was planning to leave you. Emily gasped, taking a step away from Liam. Olivia had a friend named Chloe. The name seemed to be the final blow. Liam stumbled back, collapsing onto the sofa. The mask of the grieving husband shattered, revealing the terrified, cornered man beneath. "You fought that night, didn't you?" Rossi pressed, standing over him. "She found out about the job. She told you she was leaving, and you did something to stop her." Tears streamed down Liam's face. He was sobbing now, great body-racking sobs of a man utterly broken. "I didn't hurt her," he choked out the words muffled by his hands. "I swear I didn't hurt her, but I know what happened. I know where she is." The confession, when it came, didn't break through a dam. It was more like a slow, toxic leak, spilling out of Liam in a torrent of guilt, self-preservation, and pathetic panic. The clean, violent narrative of a husband pushed too far, the one Detective Rossi had suspected, dissolved into a messier, more human tragedy rooted in weakness. "She found a letter," Liam began, his voice a hoarse, ragged whisper that was barely audible. He stared at a spot on the carpet as if the entire memory was projected there. A final notice on the mortgage stamped in red. It must have fallen behind the dresser months ago. She was cleaning, getting the last of the baby things organized. And she found it. He recounted the scene with the excruciating detail of a man reliving his own damnation. Olivia, standing in the nursery they had so lovingly painted, holding the letter. The look on her face wasn't anger, not at first. It was a deep, soul-crushing confusion. The numbers, the warnings didn't align with the world Liam had built for them. She asked me what it was. Liam choked out, tears finally beginning to stream down his cheeks. She thought it was a mistake, a scam. I tried to lie. I tried to say it was an old bill, that it was paid. But she saw it in my eyes, and it all came out. The job, the layoffs, the drained savings account, the credit cards, everything. Just as Rossi had theorized, the fight was catastrophic. It wasn't loud and violent. It was quiet and devastating. Olivia's voice never rose above a trembling whisper as she dismantled his lies, her questions like surgical strikes. She felt betrayed, not just financially, but fundamentally. The man she had built a future with was a stranger, a fraud. She confirmed what Chloe had told Rossi: she was leaving. She told him about her plan to go to Oregon to stay with her friend, to have the baby there, to figure out a life away from the wreckage of their marriage. She was packing a bag. Liam continued, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Just throwing things in. She wasn't even looking at me anymore. It was like I was already a ghost. I was begging her not to go, pleading. I told her we could fix it, but she just shook her head. I tried to grab her arm just to stop her, to make her listen." He looked up, then his eyes pleading with Rossi, with Emily, with anyone who would listen, desperate for some sliver of absolution. "I didn't push her. I just touched her arm." And then she just collapsed. She cried out, this sharp, terrible sound clutching her stomach, and she just fell to the floor, right there in the hallway. Panic, pure cold, and absolute had consumed him. His pregnant wife was on the floor in agony, and it was his fault. His lies, his weakness had done this. Any sane person, any decent husband would have called 911. But Liam wasn't sane in that moment. He was a cornered animal, his world of shame about to be exposed by flashing lights and uniformed paramedics. The thought of the neighbors, seeing, of the questions of the inevitable discovery of his fraud, it paralyzed him. His mind, scrambling for an escape route, seized on another name Olivia had thrown at him in her anger. She screamed at me that she should have left months ago. Liam whispered, shame coloring his words, that there was someone else who would have taken care of her, who wouldn't have lied to her. A man named Dr. Ben Carter, an old friend from college she'd reconnected with online. She said he was a real man, a doctor, that he actually cared about her well-being. In his terror, Liam hadn't dialed 911. He'd snatched Olivia's phone, his fingers fumbling as he found Ben Carter's number in her recent calls. He babbled incoherently about Olivia collapsing, about the fight, about the baby. Carter, shockingly, had been preternaturally calm. His voice was a soothing balm on Liam's raw terror. He'd told him not to call an ambulance, that the stress and the hospital protocols would be too much for Olivia in her delicate state. He said he was only 30 minutes away and that he would come and take care of everything. He has a cabin, Liam said, the final piece of his betrayal slotting into place. A secluded place up in the Pine Ridge Mountains. He said he would take her there, that it was quiet and private, that he had medical supplies. He could look after her until the baby came away from all the stress. He told me to make it look like she just left on her own, to drive her car to the pier and leave it, to give her the space she supposedly wanted. It was a monstrous, twisted logic, born of panic and masterful manipulation. Carter, the benevolent doctor, had seen his opportunity and seized it, preying on Liam's cowardice and Olivia's vulnerability. Liam, desperate to avoid public humiliation and clinging to the insane belief that he was somehow protecting Olivia from the stress of a hospital, had agreed. He had followed the doctor's instructions like a sleepwalker. He described helping Carter carry a semi-conscious Olivia to the man's car. He then drove his wife's Honda to the desolate pier, his mind numb. He wiped down the steering wheel, left the note he found in her half-packed bag on the pillow, and returned home to the crushing silence to begin his performance as the confused, grieving husband. Detective Rossi felt a cold fury settle in her bones. This Ben Carter wasn't a savior. He was a sophisticated predator who had isolated a pregnant woman in a medical crisis. "Where is this cabin, Liam?" she demanded, her voice cutting through his pathetic sobs. Liam, looking like a man who had finally unburdened his soul of a crushing weight, gave them the address, a remote location nearly 2 hours away. The convoy of police cars, with a frantic Emily and a stone-faced Rossi, tore through the winding mountain roads. Liam was left behind in custody, his confession securing his fate. As they pulled up the long, unpaved driveway, they saw it a modern, isolated cabin of glass and dark wood nestled among towering pines, a silent fortress. Rossi and her team swarmed the house, weapons drawn. The front door was unlocked. The interior was sterile, minimalist, and eerily quiet. They found them in a back bedroom that overlooked the dense forest. Olivia was lying in a large bed, looking pale and utterly exhausted, but she was alive. IV bags hung from a portable stand beside her, and nestled in a makeshift bassinet, swaddled in a soft white blanket, was a tiny, sleeping newborn. Standing by the window, gazing out, with the calm, proprietary air of a man in complete control, was a handsome, silver-haired man in a cashmere sweater, Dr. Ben Carter. He showed no surprise, no fear, as Rossi and her officers burst in. He simply turned and looked at Rossi as if he'd been expecting her, a faint, condescending smile playing on his lips. "I was providing her with the stress-free environment she needed," He said, his voice as smooth and arrogant as his appearance, something her pathetic husband was clearly incapable of doing. She went into premature labor due to the emotional distress his actions caused. I delivered the baby myself about 12 hours ago, a healthy baby girl. Olivia's head turned slowly. Her eyes clouded with exhaustion, and residual sedatives struggled to focus. They moved from Carter's smug face to Rossi's grim one, and then they found her sister. A sob caught in Olivia's throat as Emily rushed to her side, grabbing her hand. The relief on her face was immense, a tidal wave of emotion, but it was immediately followed by a wave of confusion and creeping fear as she began to process the reality of her rescue. The aftermath was a legal and emotional storm. Ben Carter was arrested, his messiah complex shattering under police questioning. He was a licensed physician, but his actions constituted kidnapping, reckless endangerment, and a host of other charges. He had manipulated Olivia for months, positioning himself as the stable, successful alternative to her struggling husband. Liam, out on bail, faced charges for obstruction of justice and his unforgivable role in the cover-up. Weeks later, Olivia, with her new daughter Maya, sleeping peacefully in her arms, sat in the quiet living room of Emily's apartment. She was piecing together the fragments of her life. Her marriage was over, a structure that had collapsed to reveal nothing but a foundation of lies. The man she had briefly seen as a rescuer was a manipulative monster who had preyed on her darkest fears. She was a mother now, a reality that had once filled her with terror. But holding her tiny, perfect daughter, she felt not fear, but a fierce, protective love that was both terrifying and exhilarating in its intensity. Her future was a blank page, an intimidating expanse of uncertainty. Yet for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to be the one to write it. She had survived her husband's lies and her rescuer's prison, and in the quiet, resilient strength she found every time she looked at Maya's face, she was finally truly free. What a whirlwind of lies, deceit, and desperation. From a simple note on a pillow to a secret cabin in the mountains, this story shows how quickly a picture-perfect life can unravel. Liam's desire to be a provider led him down a path of deception that nearly cost him everything, while Olivia's fear of the future made her vulnerable to a different kind of monster entirely. It's a powerful reminder that the deepest secrets are often kept from the ones we love the most. If this real-life drama kept you on the edge of your seat, imagine what other stories are out there waiting to be told. Don't forget to hit that like button if you found this story compelling, share it with someone who loves a good mystery, and subscribe to the channel for more true-to-life dramas every week. You won't want to miss what's coming next.